Well, let's get started with today's lecture, shall we? Emotional regulation does not involve the act of emotional suppression, but rather the opposite. It refers to the ability to effectively process and respond to the emotions you experience. Given all that we as human beings feel and experience, it's one thing to discuss this. It's another thing entirely in practice. The ability to effectively process and respond to all the emotions of life can absolutely feel overwhelming. Trust me, I get it. This is where the wondrous tools of mental alchemy and emotional regulation can assist in working with, rather than against, our own selves. The only way string transforms into gold is through high familiarity with the thread one is working with. The keys to becoming the you of your dreams, to stepping into the life you deserve, all lie within the entirety of your internal world. Not just the light, but also the dark. Not one side or the other, but rather all of the contrast and colors within. As we embark on this intellectual exploration together, I trust you to discern which out of all the presented tools will be to your benefit, and which may more so be to the benefit of others. So what exactly is alchemy anyways? One can easily get lost in the imagery of bearded men in robes trying to navigate to find the elixir of life. However, the ancient art is much more complex than that. So much so that an attempt to give a straightforward answer to that question would only be a disservice to all of us. Keeping that in mind, let today's discourse be an introduction to the vast, extraordinary art of alchemy and how one can use that in their everyday lives. A brief look at the history of this mystical science aids a hand in beginning to understand the subject. Although still debated, the word most likely has a Greek origin, given that Greek was the language of both the earliest alchemical texts and of literate Greco-Roman Egypt. The chem of alchemy and chemistry very probably derives from the Greek cheo, which means to melt. Cheo also gives rise to the Greek word kuma, which signifies an ingot of metal. Since most of the early chemical practices involved the melting or fusing of metals, this etymology certainly seems the most plausible and reasonable. The Greek word for the subject then is chemia or cumia, literally an art of melting metals. That word is an Arabized form of the older Greek term. The al of alchemy is simply the Arabic definite article. Reflect on that phrase, to melt. How many forms that can take? Temperatures taken to the extreme to soften, warm, bend, and manipulate metals. Ice thawing and liquefying into water. The burning of candles. A sigh of relief. The aidful release that can come through and from various tools of self-care, such as therapy, journaling, yoga, and more. Unspoken, heart-fulfilling replenishment as you connect with truly supportive company. Best put by Adam McLean on the Alchemy website. There is no one correct interpretation of alchemy. Alchemy is in its essence multifaceted and cannot be reduced to a single viewpoint. Alchemy is so multifaceted that any definition restricts alchemy to a particular view or excludes aspects that should come within the realm of the alchemical. one cannot reduce alchemy to practical laboratory work or interior meditative work with symbols or to being only a spiritual pursuit. Anthropological, Jungian, esoteric, history of science, semiotic, or other interpretations are only a way of looking at alchemy. While we could spend forever delving into the iceberg that is alchemy and all it entails, the time we have today only permits us to merely grace the surface through some of its many contemporary forms. If you're on the live, then I will put up a picture of this and hold the slide up in a second for you. Okay? These are the two most widely used emotional wheel charts. The one on the left was created by Robert Plutchik in 1980, based on physiological research. Keep in mind that physiology is a branch of biology that deals with the functions and activities of life and living matter, such as organs, tissues, and cells, and of the physical and chemical phenomena involved. Thus, the lens of physiology includes all of the physical and chemical reactions that make up our emotional experiences, such as hormones, neurotransmitters, or the way your heart rushes when panic sets in. This is important to keep in mind as we compare and contrast this emotional color wheel to the feeling wheel created by Gloria Wilcox in 1982. Created to help clients expand their emotional vocabulary, this wheel chart is based more in the study of psychology. Defined as the science of mind and behavior, psychology's focus is obviously mental, while physiology's focus is, again, more physical, biological. Plutchik's wheel is organized based on the physiological purpose of each of the 8 based emotions that are in that core center there, aka their individual unique biological functions. Thus, opposing emotions on this flower-esque chart are based on the physiological reaction that is spurred from each emotion. For example, Plutchik places fear opposite of anger because when one feels afraid, they get small and hide, versus the nature to get big and angry and loud when one is angry. This in comparison to Wilcox's wheel of polar counterparts, with fear being represented as scared, opposed to feeling at peace. 2 research-backed approaches to assist in describing the human experience that are still used today. There are far more unique emotions than these 2 charts can fully capture. However, they both can aid us in assessing and understanding how we feel. Being able to distinct and understand the emotions we experience from a space of openness is the first step to both emotional regulation and mental alchemy. We will be referring to these charts later in today's discussion. I mentioned that space of openness for a very particular reason. The better you are able to be present with the energy of the emotions you experience, the more apt you will be able to utilize that energy for your highest good. I want to be sure. Yes, perfect. It's all fine and dandy to use terms such as vibe and energy in everyday layman's terms. However, in the context of the alchemical, it is vital for us to allow our minds to expand into the depths of what these words mean. Journey with me, if you will. In the 1948 documentary Atomic Physics, Einstein shared how it followed from the special theory of relativity that mass and energy are both but different manifestations of the same thing. Both forms are 2 sides of the same coin, that coin being the very nature of existence itself. Everything that has and ever will exist not only does so in the way we commonly consider physical matter, but additionally has its own ever-changing energetic signature. An energetic signature made of electrons and atoms that are constantly communicating with its own system, as well as all the energetic signatures all around. Electromagnetic waves are nonstop, ignited by these atoms with the goal of reaching others. When an electromagnetic wave impinges upon the atoms of a material, the energy of that wave is absorbed. The absorption of that energy causes the electrons within those atoms to undergo vibrations. After a short period of vibrational motion, the vibrating electrons create a new electromagnetic wave with the same frequency as the first electromagnetic wave. Think back to grade school lessons of how the visible light spectrum is the segment of the electromagnetic spectrum which the human eye can view. Additionally, recall how sound waves are examples of mechanical waves. There is a literal energetic interaction happening ceaselessly between you, your energy, and all that you see and hear every moment of every day. An interaction that is really unfathomable. These seats, the walls of this room, you, me, our clothes, what we're wearing, every single thing. To broaden one's mind and attempt to discern the true depths of those basic physics, it truly connects everything. There is a profound and sacred correspondence between you and the universe around you. The more one ponders on this, the more one realizes that they, in fact, do contribute to the creation of their own reality. Returning to the writings of Hermes Trismegistus, this is what you must know. That in you, which sees and hears, is the word of the Lord, but the mind is God the Father. They are not divided from one another, for their union is life. Not separate from one another, like that coin analogy from earlier about matter and energy. This ancient wisdom goes back to the law of mentalism, of how our mind is connected to the collective mind of the all. Neville Goddard puts it very distinctly in his lecture titled Mental Diets, which states, when man discovers the creative power of inner talking, he will realize his function and his mission in life. Then he can act to a purpose. Without such knowledge, he acts unconsciously. Everything is a manifestation of the mental conversations which go on in us without being aware of them. This also goes back to the law of attraction, how like attracts like. Overthinking this is incredibly easy to do. Neville Goddard refers to it as inner dialogue. As a result, it might seem as if you're accountable for constantly maintaining that inner dialogue, to be in a positive space. However, that's not how things necessarily work, let alone the human mind. What comes up will inevitably go down. It is a cycle of nature that plays out in ways big and small. As a neurodivergent trauma survivor, I know this all too well. One cannot always be happy. Moreover, like yin and yang, light cannot exist without the dark. In order to see the biggest and brightest stars and galaxies out of this world, one must travel to the darkest location possible. A flow of thoughts solely composed of positivity isn't realistic. Such a task does feel overwhelming. This reminds me of Netflix and Headspace's series Guide to Meditation. The narrator discusses how many people mistakenly believe that meditation is about silencing the mind, when that's inaccurate. They use this really powerful analogy. If your thoughts are cars, meditation is about sitting on a bench and watching them go by. This mirrors Eckhart Tolle's concept of the thinker and the observer. In his conversational book, The Power of Now, he delves into this practice of listening to your thoughts as an impartial witness. Sharing, you'll soon realize there's the voice, and here I am listening to it, watching it. This I am realization, this sense of your own presence, is not a thought. It arises from beyond the mind. Once again, we are reminded to ground in that sense of interconnected wholeness within the entire human experience. Regulating one's emotions and mastering one's energy is not about trying to suppress yourself, not trying to suppress any parts of you, not trying to control your inner dialogue to only ever be positive. It's about comprehending what, as Joseph Murphy put it, sunk into your subconscious mind. Whatever you claim mentally and feel as true, your subconscious mind will accept and bring forth into your experience. From this perspective, once you learn to attach to what serves your highest good and to simply observe, learn from, and then thus be able to release the rest, streetlights and traffic directors present themselves to assist you. They direct and channel all that mental energy, all the inner workings, and thus allowing that energy, that power, to manifest itself externally in a way that serves your highest good. While this is easier said than done, cliches exist for a reason. Paths are paved, roads are built. This is a process of learning and unfolding. This is a continuous journey. Recall there's no need to chase after these cars. From the bench, you are in control of the street lights and traffic directors. They operate to facilitate the smooth flow of your mental and emotional traffic. Paths are paved, roads are built. How are we feeling, room? Do we want to take a 5-10 minute break or keep going?
I'm good.
We're all good? How are we feeling? Good?
So far, so good.
Alrighty, let's keep going. Well, so how do we get these mental traffic directors? Where do they come from? How do we get them? Let's refer back to these emotional wheel charts. Remember, the one on the left is Robert Plutchik's emotional color wheel, based on our physiological, biological responses. Gloria Wilcox's psychology-based feelings chart is on the right. Pay attention to how each chart, the uncomfortable emotions not only oppose, but also circularly flow into the positive. As previously stated, these charts are not intended to cover all emotions that humans experience. They are to assist us in identifying the feelings we undergo and are confronted with.
Recall that analogy from Guide to Meditation about sitting on the bench and watching your thoughts go by like cars. Now take a look at the more unpleasant sides of each of these wheels. Pause for a moment and ask yourself, which of the two is more commonly your grounding guide? The peaceful stillness of that bench, or the dizzying chaos of speeding cars? The danger and subsequent rush of adrenaline that came from circling and running after those cars used to dominate much of my life.
Every chase was an attempt to avert the worst possible outcome, and yet those fears would still materialize right before my eyes. That correspondence that we were talking about earlier, the energy within you flows outside of you, right? Metaphorical car crashes eventually led me to a crawl towards the preceding bench due to extreme exhaustion, leading to consequential acceptance, and thus the aforementioned mental traffic directors, eventually guiding all that energy to my external reality for the better of my life and those of others. So the question remains, how specifically do these mental traffic directors arrive? In short, it's learning how to be comfortable with your uncomfortable, with the uncomfortable. While this may sound like an irksome, troublesome thing to attempt, there are numerous recent studies that cite the benefits toward turning to discomfort or upsetting emotions with acceptance. In a 2018 3-arm parallel trial, mindfulness components were dismantled into 3 structurally equivalent 15-lesson smartphone-based interventions. 1, training in both monitoring and acceptance. 2, training in monitoring only. And 3, active control training, or coping control. While all 3 groups reported moderate levels of subjective stress, only the first group that received acceptance training experienced reduced cortisol and systolic blood pressure reactivity. These results make this study the first to provide experimental evidence that brief smartphone mindfulness training can actually impact stress biology, and that acceptance drives these effects. In 2021, during the peaks of the pandemic, a study was conducted to examine the link between social isolation and psychological distress via the mediator equanimity. The results were interesting. Rather than a lack of social contact, it is the perceived nature of isolation that is related to psychological distress, and this relationship indirectly operates through equanimity. Individuals high in the trait equanimity may be better protected from the impact of perceived social isolation. Once again, we are met with the effects our own internal perceptions have on not just our internal, but also external world. A 2023 study explains how people differ in their initial emotional responses to events. And we are beginning to understand these responses and their pervasive impacts for psychological health. However, people also differ in how they think about and react to their initial emotions. In turn, people judge their emotions as predominantly positive or predominantly negative. And thus, this may have a crucial implications for psychological health. Furthermore, the study found that positive judgments of positive emotions were uniquely associated with better psychological health, while negative judgments of negative emotions were uniquely associated with worse psychological health concurrently and prospectively. That last part is crucial to comprehend how those negative judgments have lasting effects. They continue to play out in your life. This in comparison to a mindset of acceptance and equanimity in moments of duress, where the onset of negativity is able to take space that is asking for and energetically release itself, and thus leave you alone. Let's make sure that we are on the same page when it comes to what exactly acceptance and equanimity are. According to Merriam-Webster, to accept is to receive something offered willingly. In this case, the something offered is life's ups and downs, uniquely concocted by the universe and you. Moreover, they define willing as done, born, or accepted by choice, or without reluctance. Sit with what that means in the context of all we have discussed so far. Receiving life's experiences, for better or for worse, by choice or without reluctance. While this thought could again be overwhelming, this is where the trait of equanimity comes through with plentiful aid, defined as evenness of mind, especially under stress. It's easy to start grasping how equanimity works to make acceptance possible. The thing to keep in mind with this skill is that the definition goes beyond mental detachment during a difficult situation. Equanimity means developing an evenness of mind and imperturbability while remaining fully engaged with your circumstances
and aware of the present moment. A present moment that is constantly changing, as the only permanent thing in life is change. Developing equanimity is the key to riding the waves of your stream of consciousness as it meets the ocean of the all. This stream of consciousness could be as chill as a lazy river or as active as whitewater rapids. However, it's always flowing through you to the universe, to life around you. Remember, those electromagnetic waves are endless, coming from you and back to you and all around you. This is why I mentioned the importance of learning to get comfy within the uncomfy, familiarizing yourself with your stream, your waters. Again, where do you generally fall in that place of sitting back on that bench and chasing those dizzying cars? Where do you fall, generally speaking, on the scale of rejecting versus accepting your reality? In 2022, a scholarly article titled A Learning Theory Approach to Attachment Theory, Exploring Clinical Applications, was published. When it comes to traditional attachment theory, in accordance with its Darwinian roots, every newborn infant is pre-adapted to develop an attachment relationship with an attachment figure. Newborns cannot survive without the protection and nurturing of caregivers. These experiences are stored in what John Bowlby labeled as internal working models. Securely attached children are suggested to strike a balance between exploring their environment and seeking proximity to and support from attachment figures during distress. When children experience parents to be less consistently available for support or consistently unavailable, they develop an insecure attachment relationship with them and an insecure internal working model about their parents' availability. On the one hand, children may become more ambivalent to their attachment relationships, meaning their attention and behavior express anxiety for rejection, and they continue to seek support even in events of distress. On the other hand, children may develop more avoidant behavior in an attachment relationship with parents who are consistently ignoring or even rejecting the child's bids for care and protection in times of distress. Accumulating research and meta-analysis robustly shows that an insecure working model, an insecure attachment system, predicts higher levels of internalizing and externalizing problems, all problems, across the lifespan. A secure or confident expectation that the caregiver will be available and responsive increases the likelihood that the securely attached child will enact the secure base script when confronted with dangerous, distressing, or challenging situations. The contributors go on to explain classical and operational conditioning. This is highly important to keep in mind when you are beginning to familiarize yourself with that stream of consciousness, with your waters. Classical conditioning refers to the learned expectations from the co-occurrence of neutral stimuli, such as a bell, and meaningful stimuli, such as food or pain. An obvious and iconic example of this is the Pavlov experiment, where a dog learned how to associate a bell with being fed. So then the dog heard bell and immediately thinks of food. Another example can be found in the story of Charlie and the Dog from Babette Rothschild's book, The Body Remembers. The story begins with Charlie enjoying a Sunday afternoon bike ride when a large dog begins to chase and attack him, biting his leg. Later on, after some time has passed, Charlie attends a training session at a retreat center. As he comfortably sat on his cushion listening to the lecture, the center's canine mascot, Ruff, gently placed her head on Charlie's right leg. He immediately and literally froze, right there in public. Charlie couldn't move, his mouth went dry, his heart soared, and his limbs stiffened. He was barely able to speak. This is a prime example of classical conditioning due to how Charlie generalized his fear of the type of dog that attacked him to all dogs, no matter what they looked like or how they acted. In doing so, Charlie experienced an onset of physiological and psychological panic at the sight of any dog, even at a distance, even on someone's leash. This thus created this own panic, and as soon as the dog even came to him, period. Right? This played out and had lasting effects for him. Operational conditioning, on the other hand, involves shaping behavior through a cause and effect system of positive and or negative reinforcements. Behaviors that are preferable and therefore rewarded with a positive response are increased in frequency. Behaviors that are not desired and therefore punished with a negative response reduce in frequency or disappear altogether. Examples of this are learning basic manners such as when to say please and thank you, when to say you're sorry. Or another example, again, from Babette Rothschild's book, The Body Remembers, where one can gain a fear of public speaking after a poor reception of one's natural instinct to and for assertive speech. Both classical and operational conditioning are experienced and expressed through your nervous system, that physiology we talked about earlier, through your nervous system, telling your body when it is safe and when to kick in the cortisol of fight or flight mode. These natural psychophysiological responses, alongside all types of things like diet and sleep, are all highly influential factors on one's biological rhythms and thus internal system, including one's emotional well-being. These are naturally occurring cycles, as there are naturally occurring cycles in everything, not just within your internal system, but all life in the universe itself. Understanding this is the first step to detachment as one processes and navigates in each present moment what they are able to change and what they might not be immediately able to. One of the biggest struggles of learning the art of detachment is releasing the physiological need for control. When negative experiences arise in one's life, the compulsory need to make all the bad stuff end and go away is completely understandable. However, just as I mentioned, one must keep in mind the rhythms of life and what they can influence in that present moment. Remember, there will always be ups and downs in life. Just when the pendulum of personal experiences reaches one side, it momentously moves towards the opposing end. This metaphorical pendulum of personal experiences swings along the scale of so-called positive and so-called negative, the good and the bad. Thus, releasing expectations of situations, outcomes, actions, and people can make it easier to let go of the reins and simply enjoy the ride that is life. I will reiterate, change is the only permanent thing in this life. Doing your best to be open to its persistence, the persistence of change, as it inevitably meets you, can absolutely ease your journey. As one takes aligned action to what they can influence, what they can change, awareness of these complexities and how life responds to it and how life operates through these complexities, awareness of this loss of expectations and being open to the changes as they are inevitable, is so important to moving beyond detachment into that equanimity we spoke of earlier. According to Merriam-Webster, expectations are linked to anticipation, to the looking forward to or coming or occurrence of. Through that anticipation, expectations involve stepping out of the present moment via that forward-looking lens. Remember Charlie. As soon as he saw the dog, as soon as the dog sat their head on his lap, he already had this forward-looking lens of what the dog will act like. He had a set expectation. So releasing those expectations is to meet the present moment with openness rather than limiting it to the outcome in which one anticipates. It involves being open to all possibilities. Stepping out of an anticipatory mindset into one of presence and allowing is crucial to developing equanimity. Understand that this is a gradual shift. Best put by Ram Dass, you can't tear the skin off of a snake. It has to molt. It has to fall off naturally. Keep in mind that this sense of wholeness we have continued to speak on is something that is being developed with time. Show yourself love and grace through that lens of wholeness as you mentally move out of that anticipatory, forward-looking lens and into the present moment, which again is ever-changing.
Deep stuff.
Okay, I wanted to be sure we're good. Okay, I'm going to go back in here, getting lost track of my slides, which is okay. There we go, we're still on here. So now that we have gone over law of attraction, law of mentalism, how your energy contributes to the creation of your reality, now we're getting to the finish line, thanks to the magic, the wonders of receptivity and presence. Developing these skills can absolutely feel arduous, as life doesn't stop for you to just sit in that space of learning and growing. Life throws things at you for you to grow. It gives you the opportunity to, right? Life doesn't stop, it just keeps going. The last two steps of Abraham Hicks's 5-step method, which is based on the law of attraction, can assist us here. The first step is pretty specifically specified as articulating your desire from a spiritually empowered space. That is to say, operating from the understanding of the expanded you, considering how all is connected through consciousness, which underlies everything as vibrational energy in its various forms. The second step is summarized as source answers. Taking into account that expanded you, Abraham shares how all of us, have the ability to do that. And we are selling ourselves short in living but a shadow of life that is you, when you do not learn to take the time to manage the vibration that is you, all of you, and bring it to the equivalency of who you really are. Recall the electrons detailed earlier, which create new waves from the energy they absorb. Reflect on the seemingly immeasurable number of electrons within you and surrounding you, and all interacting at this very moment. Understand that interplay is the source energy that is you expressed externally, interacting with and answering the source energy that is within you. From this point, the next step presents itself as receiving mode. Explaining further how the vibration of internal lack, that inconsistent internal working system we just spoke on, right? Explaining further how the vibration of internal lack manifests in comparison to the vibration of trust, acceptance, and abundance. Abraham elaborates, you give birth to this new idea, to the expansion, to the new becoming, just like you knew you would. And the larger part of you went over there and became it. And when you don't go, it doesn't feel good. Step 4 procedurally happens through mastery of step 3, clarified with accepting the contrasting nature of reality. Abraham illustrates the art of allowing through its opposing viewpoint. There is allowing, which is going with the stream or current of who you have become, your life. And there is disallowing or resistance or not going. The better you feel, the more you are allowing. The worse you feel, the more you are not allowing. You cannot ever separate yourself from this stream. And through this mastery, step 5 unfolds through this understanding of it, the value of exposure to life that will give you more clarity about something you want. Upon reaching step 5, the possibilities and opportunities are endless. From this space, the universe is your canvas to paint, utilizing the entire spectrum of internal colors within you. As stated in the beginning of this discourse, I trust you all to discern which out of all that we've discussed, which tools, which grounding guides will be to your benefit, which may more so be to the benefit of others that have tuned in today. That said, I understand we have covered quite a bit of material today, and I wanted to open the floor to all of you. Is there anything that I could re-go over? Is there anything I can clarify? Are there any questions?
Lots.
Lots. Well, what do you have in mind?
When you have a negative space,
Yes.
right? Or you're running after the cars instead of sitting on the bench.
Mm-hmm.
How do you catch your breath and go back to the bench? What is the best mental alchemy to help someone achieve that?
So, I want to go back into that acceptance, right? It's easy to get caught in the rush, that adrenaline rush, when you're in that space, right? Around all of those cars that are moving. The first step is understanding, right? Simply looking around, understanding this is what is happening. I am around all of these chaotic moving cars, and I feel like I can't sit down. It is being with yourself and being in the present moment. And that, there's a variety of tools to do that, right? There's breathing techniques. There's also grounding techniques. There's a lot of different therapeutic tools, but the point is to do what is best for you to bring you into the present moment.
So finding that awareness that that's where you're at.
Yes.
Instead of just doing.
Yes.
To try and catch a moment.
The question was about
occur the awareness.
negative headspaces. Yeah, it is about that presence, right? And awareness. Instead of operating from that forward-looking lens, right? You're watching the cars go by.
Because you think you're going to be able to get ahead of the car.
Exactly.
And turn it off, but sometimes you just have to stop
There's-
and be aware of where you are.
Right? There's a point where the car escapes
Maybe
you.
you have twos.
There's a point where the car escapes you and
Yeah.
you can't follow through with that car. You have to trust that car is going to manifest in the way it's meant to.
Yeah.
There are certain things that will ripple out, and you can control you and your energy.
Mm-hmm.
So it's about being present in all of those cars and doing what you need to do to be present, which entirely will look different for each individual.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But it's about finding how you can best ground yourself.
Thanks.
What are some of the techniques you use to best ground yourself?
Best techniques that I use: breathing techniques and feeling into the body. So understanding that emotions can take space physically, like that physiology we were talking about earlier. Understanding that and trying to breathe into your own physical body. Where is this taking space, right? Sometimes with that anxiety, it can be a huge, big heart space and it feels like your heart's beating out of your chest. Other times it can be blood pressure and it feels like your whole world's kind of crazy. Sometimes that can be some stomach issues, right? Where is that taking space in your body? Take into account how you feel in that moment so that you can... I'm thinking about all those moving cars. It can be so easy to step out of your body and into, I have to fix this, I have to follow through with this, versus attuning to your energy and knowing that in doing so, the universe and life will balance out as you do so, right? The first step to that, for me at least, has been tapping into the physical body so that I can get out of my head. There's also body tapping can be really great for that, alongside affirmational work. Getting into the physicality of how it feels. Absolutely. Thank you. Are there any other questions? Okay.
Talk to you later.
I don't see any questions on the live. So,
Thank you
thank you guys for tuning in today. I want to thank the Oklahoma Psychic Education and Research Association for inviting me to speak today. It is their 50th anniversary this weekend, and there is a metaphysical market right across over here if anybody watching wants to go support some Oklahoma-based businesses. I'm very honored that I got to speak today, and I hope this hit you guys and resonated with you guys and helps you in your life in the future. If you would like to learn more about mental alchemy, or if you have any professional inquiries, you can go to my website, astraluna.online.
Astraluna?
Yeah, astraluna.online. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.